Of all the nations suffering as a result of Donald Trump's tariff tirades, Canada is the only one in the middle of a national election. The timing sucks. I'm Larry Fedoruk, and this is Later That Same Life. On each episode of my weekly podcast, a different topic, discussion, or story from our lives.
Season 16, Chapter 6.
Canada votes.
On the 14th of March, 2025, Mark Carney was sworn in as Canada's 24th Prime Minister. As with any non-elected PM within a parliamentary system, Carney was expected to call an election as soon as possible. He made the call on March 23rd, the day before Parliament was to resume. Here's the strategy, which I'm not sure I agree with. On March 24th, Parliament would resume. Carney wouldn't even have a seat in Parliament, but again, in our system, not the first to have to rule from outside the House. It is thought that the Conservatives would introduce a non-confidence motion and that it would pass, thereby forcing a dissolution of Parliament and therefore an election. But would that have happened? In order for a non-confidence motion to pass, it would have needed the support of the NDP. The federal NDP were, and are, polling at some of the lowest numbers in their history. Why would the NDP want an election right now? Would it not have been a better strategy to continue to vote with the Liberals, have a by-election in a safe riding to get Carney onto the floor, then try and limp the current government to at least the summer break? Parliament would then resume in the fall just ahead of October, when the fixed election date would come around anyway. In some ways, it seems that it would have been better to wait the 6 months or so. More time to plan, fundraise, and for everybody's fortunes to come around. That is just speculation on my part, but I'm sure that all the different scenarios were discussed at length at all party headquarters well into the night. And there is a problem with that. Even if Carney won a by-election, I don't know that Canada would have tolerated a non-elected Prime Minister well into the fall. It certainly would have been within his legal mandate to continue to serve up to or closer to a fixed election date, but also seeing him in action for that amount of time, well, that could go either way. Yeah, sure, the people might love him, but you're also taking a chance that his star might fade just before people go to the polls, because the opposite had been happening. After Trudeau resigned and Carney was voted in overwhelmingly as party leader, becoming PM, the Liberal poll numbers spiked. They were behind Pierre and the Conservatives by 25 points, and suddenly they were virtually even, at times leading in certain demographics and geographics. So you strike now while the iron is hot. Because, there's nothing like an outdated blacksmithing reference to get those young people interested in politics. By Canadian election law, a campaign has to be between 37 and 51 days. No shorter, no longer. March 23rd, the writ was dropped for an April 28th election day. That's 37 days. The minimum. Less time to fall out of favor. Less time for stuff to go wrong. That's really it. The difference between now and then. We have a new guy. Polls are favorable. Let's not wait. Now, of course, this is no guarantee for the Libs. The only guarantee after this election is that Jagmeet Singh and Maxime Bernier will be sitting on the sidelines contemplating their own relevancy. At some point, they may ask Elizabeth May if she wants to share an Uber to the outskirts of politics. It will be Mark or Pierre. And does either of them have the chance at a majority? Yeah, there's a chance. More likely, a minority. Now, a minority government in a parliamentary system can actually be really good for the people, because politicians must work together instead of just pushing through their own party's agenda. If Poilievre gets a minority, how long do you think that would last? He's famous for not building coalitions and partnerships. So who would support him? The NDP, the Greens, the Libs? Doubt it. Whereas a Carney minority could see cooperation, once again, from the NDP and the Bloc Québécois. If Carney loses the election, will he stay on as party leader? Will they even want him to stay on? I think yes. Couple of reasons. First being, how long could a conservative minority government under Poilievre last? Weeks? Months? Carney doesn't have to win to stay on as leader. He just has to do well. Secondly, in the ranks of the Liberal Party, who else do they have? As always, when you see a party leadership race and you're down to the last 3 or 4 strong candidates, you end up getting to know some very bright and talented people. But it doesn't mean they're leaders. And more importantly, electable leaders. I think previous to Carney, the strongest candidate was Chrystia Freeland. But she went from Freeland to Neverland when she got the ball rolling. Let's not forget, the only reason we are in this untimely election mess right now is Chrystia Freeland. She was the one that openly and vocally disagreed with Justin. She resigned as long-standing Deputy PM and Minister of Finance. She was the closest to Trudeau, the longest serving, the highest profile, and her very public showing of non-confidence only fueled the already burning dumpster fire of Trudeau resentment. I'm not even thinking here about the F. Trudeau conservatives, although if you think about it, about 10 years after Justin was sworn in, I guess he was sworn out. You know, for a good year previous, there were factions within the Liberal Party calling for new leadership. They felt they just couldn't win with Justin, and they were probably right. Seems a shame, a leader that took them from nothing to 10 years of governing, through an economic crisis and a pandemic, keeping Canada as one of the world's top 10 economies, and suddenly, we want you out. Well, that's politics. It's dirty. What? I'm fired? Gee, I was expecting thank you. I think Justin knew it too. He was just holding off on the inevitable. And you know, he just might have held on somehow for a few more months, if not for Chrystia Freeland. Back to my original point. Though she continues to be a valued member of the party, she is no longer leadership material. You don't stab Caesar and then make Brutus the emperor. The leadership suit right now looks better on Mark Carney. So, barring any, let's say, unforeseen, impossible Justin comeback, even if Carney loses, I think he's in this for a while. By the way, you know that I love numbers. If Carney loses on April 28th, he will be Canada's shortest-serving Prime Minister at just 46 days. Now, granted, that is longer than David Hasselhoff's reality show was on TV. But still, not a record you want to hold as Canadian Prime Minister. The current record holder is Sir Charles Tupper, 68 days, beginning in late 1896. 68 days and gone. Thank goodness he could fall back to his career in resealable food containers. The other short-serving PMs are in more recent history. John Turner, 79 days. Kim Campbell, 132 days. I was surprised to see that. I thought that was even less. But no, 132. And Joe Clark, 243 days. And those are all the PMs who served less than a year. And if you're trying to bone up for your next pub trivia night, longest-serving Canadian Prime Minister, William Lyon Mackenzie King, from back in the day when a politician could actually have the name Lyon and nobody cared. 21 years, 154 days from the late 1920s to the 1940s. Second was John A. Macdonald, followed by Pierre Trudeau. From there, longest-serving, Wilfrid Laurier, Jean Chrétien, Stephen Harper, Justin Trudeau, and Brian Mulroney. I'm sure Carney would rather be on the long list than on the short one. And Poilievre, well, I'm not sure what he wants. He does want to bring it home. I know that. Bring it home. I'm not sure what he wants to bring home. A new kitten? An air fryer? A Kia Sorento? The last 8 bars of Honky Tonk Woman? Bring it home. You know, Mark Carney called our election on March 23rd. It was a Sunday. By late Monday afternoon, I was already burnt out on our election campaign. It's not just the election campaign, I guess. It's politics. Burnt out on politics. That is Trump's fault, mostly. Have you seen the new MAGA hats? I guess the anti-MAGA hats? Make America go away? The heartfelt sentiment of Canada and Greenland? Although because of all this, Greenland is certainly getting a better reputation than it used to have.
Friendless, brainless, helpless, hopeless. Do you want me to send you back to where you were? Unemployed in Greenland?
We're barely into this campaign, and it already feels like too much. It's the news networks, the ones that I watch for news, except they don't do news anymore. They just cut to the candidate, stumping for votes. There's Mark Jagmeet Pierre, and there they are, standing in front of a bunch of men and women in reflective vests and yellow hard hats. The working people. That's the way they want to show that they, the politicians, are for the working people. And apparently people who really work wear reflective vests and yellow hard hats. I guess it's the same vest and hard hat that Mark Carney would have worn when he was at the Bank of Canada. The same one that career politician Pierre Poilievre wears when he stands up to speak in the House of Commons. Suddenly they're all standing in front of vests and hard hats. Hey, we need a bunch of people in vests and hard hats for our leader to stand in front of. Do you know anyone? Why don't you call Doug Ford? He's got them all on file. He's been standing in front of them for the last 7 years. Hey, here's an idea. All working people should have to wear reflective vests and yellow hard hats, right? Cashiers, teachers, accountants, bus drivers, bartenders, flight attendants, chefs, baristas, servers, doctors, nurses, lawyers, judges. Well, why not even the news anchor? Let's all wear reflective vests and yellow hard hats, just to show that we are working stiffs, the ones who politicians want to cater to. Of course, you also need the work boots, the steel-toed work boots, but they don't really show up on the camera shot. Doesn't matter, Pierre still has a slogan, boots, not suits. Good one. I'm sure that'll sway a lot of voters. Sadly, it probably will. And, of course, if you have a job where you must wear a reflective vest and a hard hat, respect, of course. But I'm just saying. Notice, too, that the new trend in these candidate appearances is to have a higher podium. You know they bring their own podium. The podium has branding on it. Could be the party logo or maybe a slogan, and it's in the colors of the party, red, blue. The podiums used to come up to about low chest high. Now they're almost up to the shoulders. Why? Well, it's easier to get that branding on TV for the 20 minutes that TV news is covering it. Before that, if the camera zoomed in to a medium shot and had scrolling on the bottom of the screen, you wouldn't see the logo and the branding. So they've moved it up higher, I guess. Looks kind of stupid in my opinion. It looks like Mark and Pierre are really short people trying to peek over a wall. I don't know that a higher podium works. Notice I didn't mention Jagmeet and the NDP. They don't really have a branded podium. Do you know how much those things cost? They're lucky to have a microphone and a sound system. No podium. Usually it's just Jagmeet and his sweater du jour. It's fundraising, you know. Pierre and Mark, they can fly from Montreal to Toronto. Jagmeet is 7 hours on the 401 in a bus. At least it's an orange bus. Campaign funds. They get you planes and podiums and more signs on lawns. And this time around it's different. Usually all parties provide space on the planes and the buses for media. Media travels with the main candidates. Except this time, not the Conservatives. The Conservatives have not allowed for media to travel with them. So if Pierre goes to Sudbury, Saskatoon, or Kamloops, we have to count on a generic media feed provided by the Conservatives, which will only capture and show what the Conservatives want the people to see. Sometimes the real story is on the other side of the camera. Media would turn the camera around and show you. Conservatives will not. Media, those fake news bastards. You may have noticed also that during the campaign, and this is always the case, Mark Carney is not called the Prime Minister of Canada for the 37 days. He's the leader of the Liberal Party. It's stupid, really. Because if he takes a day off the campaign and has to work on Prime Minister stuff, then the media calls him the Prime Minister of Canada. Next day he's at a rally, he's the Liberal leader. I guess they do this out of fairness, but it's quite dumb when you think about it. You're not the Prime Minister on the campaign trail, but you are the Prime Minister. Back to my other point, I don't know how news got so tied up with politics. During an election, I get it, you have to cover the various pursuits of democracy. But I think that a lot of people have the same problem as I do. We just get burnt out. Burnt out at election time because of all the reports of politics that led up to it. There's billions of people in this world. People with stories. People who do things worth reporting. But the news media doesn't cover them for the most part. Why? Too lazy, too stupid, not enough money? Yeah, all that and more. It's easier just to point a camera at a bloated politician behind a podium and call it news. I think that's why social media took off. Facebook, Twitter, they just said, what are you doing right now? Tell your story. We curated our own content, as opposed to news always telling us what's important. And if you're going to carry all these politicians live on your TV, I have a request. Can you have better reporters there asking better questions? Do you think people pay attention to the news reporting of candidates, and the issues, and the policies? I heard an incredible euphemism from a U.S. pundit recently. He was talking about Trump supporters who are low information voters. Low information voters. Excuse me. Are you talking about morons? Idiots? Who fall for the lies and the double talk and the slogans? Oh, no. They're not morons. They're just low information voters. Ah, I see. I used to have this theory that in Canada we were better informed. You know why? Because we had to listen to everything twice. Learning by repetition. When a politician would talk in Canada, we would listen in our first language, and then again, as an interpreter translates the thing that he or she just said. That was helpful. And that's why, though I'd be a lousy politician, I'd make my statement, and then a reporter would say, would you please repeat that in French? And I'd go, are you kidding me? I don't remember what I just said. And you're asking me to repeat it in another language? I don't think so. Who remembers what they just said? It's a skill that politicians develop. And because of it, we used to be smarter. But more and more, I think we're becoming low-information voters. Here we are in Canada, battling our own version of Trumpism. The Poilievres, the Danielle Smiths, the Scott Moes, the Doug Fords. Bringing it home for the people, at least for the people in reflective vests and yellow hard hats. I love Poilievre's a proud flag. What is a proud flag? We have a nice flag. I love it. I didn't know it was proud to be a flag. We're in the middle of a national election. 5 political parties. 6, really, although 2 main ones. A national election, by definition, is an event that highlights the varying opinions and divisions within our country at a time when it is more important than ever to show a One Canada, Team Canada approach. Thank you, Chrystia Freeland. Hey, Chrystia, listen, I get it. You have ethics, and you were pissed. But, you could have kept your mouth shut for just a couple more weeks. When Doug Ford becomes the de facto Canadian spokesperson, looks like he's soon to have his own show on CNN, I think. Well, we're screwed. We're doing our best to show unity and solidarity and elbows up, but we're in an election. Trump and the United States are like vultures, hovering, waiting to peck away at the remains after a battle where we just mortally wounded each other. Just look at the election issues. They're there, like, climate, immigration, economy, healthcare. But one of the big questions this time around is, who do you think is better equipped to handle Donald Trump? That's our election issue? That is foreign interference. Canada, strong. You see, that would be a positive. Never 51, that's a negative. That is forcing us to focus on something that we won't do, as opposed to voting for all the great things we should do. Listen, vote as your heart and head suggests. In this country, at least, the far left has not taken over the left, whereas the far right has commandeered the once progressive conservatives. The satirical comedy show this hour has 22 minutes, called Pierre Poilievre a Timbit Trump. So brilliant, I thought it was worth repeating. Hell, I long for the days of Aaron O'Toole compared to this piece of work. We're never 51. Okay, so that's what we are not. But right now, we have a chance to define who we are.
Later That Same Life is written, voiced, and produced by Larry Fedoruk. LarryFedoruk37@gmail.com. Subscribe to Larry's podcast YouTube channel. Get automatic notifications with each new episode.